Hey, Bridging the Gap.
What's going on, BTG fam? It's Roger.
And Cheryl.
And we're back to pick up on Noah's children, their second child, Ham, at least in order listed in the Bible. Ham is the next child that is discussed. And what we're going to talk about with Ham is quite critical to the discussion that we're having. This is about, really guys, I want to recap really. What are we here for? We're talking about bridging the gap. We named this channel Bridging the Gap because we do want to bridge the gap between us and our brothers and sisters on the continent. We want to bridge the gap between nonsense and truth. And we want to bridge the gap between us as a human people because lies divide, right? So as we're talking about Ham today, there's going to be some exposure of some things that most of us have been taught that are just divisive and have been intended to be that way from the beginning. So Ham is critical in this process. So we're going to get started with picking up in Genesis 10, which gives us the description. Last time we went through Japheth. Japheth is the first boy that's listed in Genesis 10. The next child that is listed of Noah is Ham. So
Genesis 10, 6 through 8. And the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim and Put and Canaan.
Pause right there. Ham had 4 kids. Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. 4 of them. We're going to talk about those 4 boys. Go ahead.
And the sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sapta, Ramah, and Sabetcha. And the sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. Mm-hmm. And Cush begat Nimrod and began to be a mighty one in the earth.
All right. So those are the sons of Ham. His 4 sons and some of his further descendants leading down to Nimrod. So we want to take a look at who those boys are. Kind of like we did with Japheth. Who are they? Where are they? So if you do a quick Google search just for the descendants of Ham, as you can see on the screen, pulls up a lot of different links. We're going to click on one of those links so that you can see how they break down who these 4 descendants of Ham are. Alrighty, so nations of Ham. You'll see in the second paragraph there, it says Ham is the youngest of Noah's 3 sons along with Japheth and Shem. Ham himself has 4 sons, namely Cush, which is Ethiopia. We know that to be in Africa. Mizraim, which is Egypt, which also we know to be in Africa. And Put, which is Libya, which we know to be in Africa. Lastly is Canaan. It says after Canaan, Canaanites are believed to be the first people in Israel. How is that even possible? Canaan was the land given to the descendants of Ham's last child, Canaan. Jacob and Abraham and them wasn't even on the scene. How are you the first ones in Israel? Israel's a people. These people get this so mixed up. How can Canaan, who is the first to arrive on the scene, be the first inhabitants of Jacob's land, which came hundreds of years later? Anyway, if you go back to the previous page, babe. On this page where we just did the Google search, if you look over to the right, you'll see that Wikipedia kind of tells you a little bit about these boys. It says, and the father of Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan, which is Ham. Ham's descendants are interpreted by Flavius Josephus and others as having populated Africa. So these are the African nations, according to Wikipedia. And it says, and adjoining parts of Asia. So now, I told you last time that we were going to take a look at this child, Mizraim, as they mentioned it last time in the last video, they talked about three different ethnic groups of Jews that are in the land of Israel right now. And the first was the Ashkenazi Jews, which was 44.2%, and then the Sephardic Jews, which are Spain, and the Mizrahim Jews, which they said are Asians from Iran, Iraq, and I believe Libya. What they're saying is that not the Orientals. They said Orientals, actually. What I'm saying is Asians. Africans populated those regions. Matter of fact, when Cheryl was reading, we stopped at Nimrod because I want y'all to recognize that Nimrod was the one who really decided on building the Tower of Babel, where all the languages got scattered and the reference Babylon came out of that tower. All of that happened in Iraq. These were Africans, descendants of Ham in other regions. Yes, some of the first folks in Asia were black. So Mizrahim doesn't apply to Oriental people as they used it. It could apply to Asians that were black, which makes sense because all of Ham, these four boys, are African nations, including Canaan. I know they call that area. They call that area the Middle East. But Israel, the land of Canaan, is on the African tectonic plate. It's just northern Africa. So, wanted to bring that clarity because they kind of twisted that a little bit. When they talked about Mizrahim, Mizrahim is not Japheth. Mizrahim is actually Egypt. That is the descendants of Ham. That is the African nations are the descendants of Ham, as laid out by pretty much everybody. Next, we want to go to
Genesis 15 and 15.
No, take it from there.
And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age.
But in the fourth generation, they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So we were talking about this in our second video. I was talking about these Amorites and the time of the Amorites not being complete. This was the prophecy to Abram that his descendants were going to go into slavery for 400 years, and that at the end of that, Abram's going to die at a good old age and be buried with his father. But at the end of that 400 years, the fourth generation will come back here because the time of the Amorites is not yet complete. We're going to look at this time of the Amorites, but I want to take a step back and look at Genesis 10 a little further down, the descendants of Nimrod. If you look down, let's start at verse 14. And Peruthasim and Kashulim, out of whom came the Philistines. We know Philistines and the Palestinians, that's all in that region of Canaan. And Caphtorim and Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite and the Amorite and the Girgashite. So the Amorites are of this descendant, this lineage of Ham and Canaan, and they're in that region. What God was saying to Abram is, look, their time has to play out. You're going to die. Your children are going to go into slavery. At the time their iniquity is complete, then your children will return to this place that I've shown you as a promised land, which is Canaan. So that's what was prophesied. Now, we're all familiar with this passage from Joshua. It says, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I want to read the whole thing to you. It says in verse 15, Joshua 24, and if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose ye this day whom ye will serve, whether the gods of which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, before the Red Sea incident. You're serving gods of Egypt and all of that or whatever. Are you going to serve those gods? Or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell? You are in their land right now. Are you going to make the same mistakes you made in Egypt? Are you going to worship false gods because you're in somebody else's land? Then he goes on to say, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So this is linking up with that 400-year time frame having to be that time spent in Israel. Because God told Abram, you're going to die. We got to wait for the time of the Amorites to come to an end, their iniquity to be complete. Now Joshua, who has led the Israelites into the promised land, is asking them, are you going to make the same mistakes that you made before? You worship the gods of the nations where you were before, and now you're in the land of the Amorite. You're going to do the same thing? Because as for me and my house, we are going to follow the Lord. That clarifies that time frame. The Amorites, descendants of Ham, the African nations, Ham had the first crack at being a world power. And God designed it that way and told Abraham before these boys were even born that it was going to be, that his descendants were going to go through this. Because God laid it out. When he had these three children, when Noah had these three children, God knew exactly what he was going to do with them. And history proves it. It shows it. So that clarifies the transition we were talking about last time, the time of the Amorites and Japheth and those things. Let's move on to the next topic. What we want to talk about now is the curse on Canaan. So there was a prophecy. You have it?
Genesis 9,
you want to read
25
it?
through 27.
So Genesis 9, you got it?
I have it.
Because this ties directly into why who's who matters and how this whole slavery thing was justified. And why we're dealing with the racial atrocities that we see today. This is how they justify that stuff.
So Genesis 9, starting at 25, and he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall be."
Let me get the backdrop. Sorry, let me do a quick backdrop. I should have done this. This passage of scripture, because we're not going to read you the whole thing. This is when Noah drank too much, right? And was exposed, and his son Ham, not the youngest son, I'm not sure about the order, but his son Ham saw him in his nakedness. Now, whether it was him putting his eyes on his father or what he did with that information, it wasn't good. So Japheth and Shem backed in backwards with a sheet, covered their father up, respecting the fact that he was exposed. Then Noah spoke over these boys from what Ham did. He said, basically, I'm taking your youngest child. Canaan was Ham's youngest, as we just read. And this is what Noah spoke over Canaan because of what Ham did. Go ahead.
And he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren." And he said, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant."
So there's a lot to unpack there. So first things first, Ham made the mistake. It was not Ham who was cursed. It was his youngest child who was cursed. Okay, so that applies to Canaan. It says, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brothers." Then it goes on to say, and he blessed, and he said, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem." If you remember last time we were reading, the gentleman who broke down all the European nations of Japheth, he says, we all know and agree that God is the God of Shem. The Bible told him that. The Bible informed him. God is the God of Shem, which is why you can refer to God, and the Bible does refer to God, as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Or the God of Israel.
Or the God of Israel. Repeatedly throughout the Bible, because that is in Shem's line. They are not in Japheth's line. They are not in Ham's line. And the Bible tells you that God is the God of Shem. And then it says, "And Canaan shall be a servant," shall be Shem's servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, as we talked about, enlarging Japheth. We looked at how his territory has grown. "And he shall dwell in the tents of Shem." Well, Japheth is all up in Israel right now, so that's dwelling in the tents. "And Canaan shall be his servant." So it starts out by saying Canaan, not Ham, will be a servant of servant unto his brothers. And then it played out that way. And in the end, where we're at, Japheth's tent is being enlarged and he is dwelling in the house of Shem.
Here's something so we've always been taught or made to believe that the curse was on Ham.
Correct.
And if you tie the curse, if you decide to make Ham the progenitor of the dark people, or say that those are Africans, that's pretty much well known. So then you can't say Canaan, because you know Canaan is tied with Israel. So if you make Canaan, if you use that and say Canaan was cursed, then it doesn't work with your lie.
It doesn't work with the lie, and because slavery and all of what they've done with this misinterpretation of the Bible, they're trying to cover all of black people.
Yeah.
If they were to just say it was one child, then how do you rape and pillage the whole continent of Africa? Mm-hmm. So they had to make it look like Ham was the one under the curse, and a lot of people, I don't know if you guys have been taught this, but I'm sure most of you have, if not a lot of you have been taught that the curse was dark skin. Mm-hmm. That was the curse. As we talked about in the beginning, Moses was a Hebrew. He was raised in Pharaoh's house as his grandchild. Mm-hmm. Couldn't be raised in Africa under in the Pharaoh's house white. Mm-hmm. and keep it a secret, right? Jesus and his parents couldn't have walked to Egypt to hide
in the hot sun.
In the hot sun. Come on, man. You can't go hide somewhere where you stand out like a sore thumb. And if you look at, we didn't talk about this before, but Solomon, the Song of Solomon, where he says, I'm black and I'm comely, means I'm black and I'm beautiful. Yeah. These folks were black, right? So you have to encompass everybody in that and say this was the curse, was black skin. Mm-hmm. And now everybody under that, we can basically say we're justified in doing what we're doing to the entire continent of Africa. Not just Ham, not just Shem, but both. Mm-hmm. Though the majority of us who live in that lineage that endured through Deuteronomy 28 and chattel slavery are the descendants of Shem, because that was told to us and we have lived it out. But that hasn't stopped them from trying to subjugate the entire continent of people who have the same skin color as we do. So with that, I think that is about all we wanted to cover, except giving you their definition. Because we're telling you things you can Google that obviously we didn't put on Google, right? We're giving you the Bible. And now we want to take you to Zondervan's, what Zondervan is a Christian Bible dictionary, right? So this is obviously something we didn't write. But we want you to see what they have to say themselves about Ham, right? It says Ham, perhaps hot, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, and this is where they justify this curse being all of Ham and everybody with dark skin being part of it. But what's the next thing they say? He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes. I'm gonna let that linger for a minute. I'm gonna let you marinate on that. Then it goes on to say, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites, which is what we told you the descendants of Ham was, which is what Google will tell you. Those are the descendants of Ham. Let's go back to the video. So the question is, if those are the descendants of Ham, and he is, quote unquote, the progenitor of the dark races, why do you have to distinguish between him and the Negroes? This is not us making this up. This is Zondervan's Bible dictionary explanation, clarifying from a religious standpoint who's who, what's what, so we can understand God better, right? That's their mission.
So there's dark races, and some of them are Negroes, but
they're not
these Hamites are not the Negroes.
Then yeah. The Hamites are not the Negroes. The Negroes are not the Hamites.
You was about to say Negroes.
The Negroes are not the Hamites, but the justification for all of the foolishness we've seen play out globally in this racial animus that we still live in today is that this is a curse. Mm-hmm. First of all, not all of Ham was cursed. One child was cursed, to be a servant to his brothers. And that one child was a descendant of Ham. So not all of Ham was cursed, and that had nothing to do with Shem. That had nothing to do with Shem. But here's the point. Why is Japheth not mentioned in there?
In the dictionary definition?
In the Zondervan dictionary, Japheth is not mentioned. So there's a huge issue. They felt it necessary to distinguish between Ham and Shem, the Negroes, but Japheth is not mentioned in there. That's because Japheth didn't look like them, which is why you even would have to make the statement of the progenitor of the dark races. That means these kids after Noah didn't have the same skin tone. We know where they reside now, but apparently that skin tone was an issue from the beginning, or they wouldn't have had to label it that way. The progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negro. So who's the Negro? It can't be Japheth, right? We don't come from Europe. So it's got to be Shem. And that is critically important. And we're going to show you why with some older maps before Europe carved up Africa. We're going to show you who these Negroes are and where these Negroes are. Because it's critical and it plays into where we are today. The whole slave trade, the whole 9 yards, but they use this skin color issue and this so-called curse on people who have this skin color to justify the foolishness. And we're going to see where these Negroes came from and where they are today, because it is critically important to understanding who you serve and who you're blessing. You cannot serve the God of Shem and not know who Shem is. You cannot serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and not know who those people are. And you cannot.
In truth, you can't. You can think you are.
Right, you can think you are, but you're not. If you don't know who God is and what his priorities are. If God is in the Bible saying he is the God of Shem, if he's saying I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Israel, you might want to get in line with who those people are. Because he said, I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you. And he told us there will be people who are fakes in the last days. Do you really want to be connected to something that's ish and not 100? Do you really want to be persecuting God's jewels, as Hitler put it? Who matters? You can't bridge a gap between anybody and anything in foolishness and lies. Who matters? And for those of us who are the descendants of Jacob, it matters critically for us because we're experiencing what we're experiencing because of our disobedience. The Bible said this is a stiff-necked people. And if you look around, that's still us today. That's still us today. And these things that we're experiencing will not stop until we get our act together and focus on God more than we focus on our stubborn selves. So it is critical. Like I said, protesting, rioting, all that other stuff, I ain't mad at it, but don't expect it to change anything. Has it? It's 400 years that we've been here. How much has it actually changed? We got Kamala going to be the VP, and we have Barack as the president. How much has changed? We're still experiencing the same things because it ain't them that's doing it to us. God said he was going to do this. And it's not going to stop until we stop. So, who is important? I think that's about it for this video. Next time we'll jump into that last son. Since the Bible just told us that he is the God of Shem, we need to take a good look at who Shem is and where Shem is at. Because Shem ain't them folks over there. with the ISH on the end of what they call themselves. So, anything else, bud?
That's it.
Guys, we hope you're following along with this. Please let us know in the comments if this information is coming across clearly. There's so much of it. And we want to give you some information we don't want to just tell you. We want to guide you into doing your own due diligence and research. So let us know if we're giving you enough for you to go out and research on your own. Like that page I just told you to Google, there's a ton of stuff in there. Not all of it true. Not all of it true, but you know clearly who Ham is. You know who Ham is, and they've told you who Ham is and who he's not. And he's not the Negroes. So there's a lot of things we've been told. Yeah, who are the Negroes, and why did this progenitor of the dark races, why did that have to be pushed the way it is? The way it was pushed, it was all an agenda, and they knew it was a lie. Zondervan ain't new. That Christian Bible is not new. They've known for a very long time that all of us are not Ham. But they pushed that is the curse, dark skin, and that's what the justification for slavery was, and all of that foolishness, and the people they took into slavery wasn't even Ham. Wasn't Canaan, wasn't none of them. It was Jacob. And we're going to show you that next time. With the land of the Negroes.
All right. Bye-bye, guys.
See you later.